All right, we're live. Today is October 29th. This is our weekly developer check-in meeting. And before we start, I'm going to do something I forgot in the last meeting. We should go around and do some introductions. I will start and popcorn it over to Greg next. My name is Jen Lampton. I am joining from Oakland, California. I'm very excited about all of the exciting stuff that's happening in the world of Backdrop, even though I'm not doing my part. So I will try to fix that. Greg, let's go to you.
I am Greg. Usually in Australia, but now due to COVID, joining from Greece. I haven't been that active in the issue queue for the past 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm very eager to go back and keep up with what's been happening lately and start doing some work for the next release. Pass it on to Luke.
I'm Luke McCormick, coming to you live from San Ramon, California. I do marketing and various other things associated with the project when I can. Matthias?
Sure, I'm Matthias from Switzerland, and actually I'm not a developer. The goal is just to have an overview of what has been going on in the past few weeks in the project. Nate?
Hello, I'm Nate Lampton, also in Oakland, California. I'm core committer, and this week I'm excited to go over our regular status updates on things. There's a lot of activity in the issue queue on issues that we don't normally talk about. So yeah, excited to see things moving along as always. To Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim, coming to you from Deerwood, Minnesota. My big backdrop thing right now is starting a discussion about backdrop event tools. We have a project called backdrop_events, where we're looking at maybe a distribution or at the very minimum some Contrib modules to help with events. Go on. Joseph.
Hi, I'm Joseph from Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm a backend developer, frantically trying to get all of the ideas that you guys have coded up.
And that's
Thank you.
it.
I think that's it. Yep.
Jen, do you want to give us the Contrib project updates?
Sure. So we have been on fire, and by we, I mean everybody else. Since the last meeting, we've had a ton of new contributed projects: webform structured text, webform layout, webform telephone, webform countdown, webform autocomplete, private files download permission, and Ajax markup. So thank you everybody that's continuing to work on porting modules from Drupal. I'm gonna kick it back over to Nate for backdrop progress.
Sure. So 117 is our current release. 117.1 is the current minor or bug fix version, and 117.2 will be the next release that we create. Since our release on September 15th, if I look at the ready to be committed list, or sorry, the closed list from 117, there are, sorry, 117.2, 15 closed issues right now slotted in the 117.2 list, and 68 currently open ones. So we have a huge bucket of minor fixes that could be fixed in 117.2. A lot of them have been getting hung up on needs review state, which is kind of typical. And the ones that we normally mention during this meeting, like the first 5 or 6 of them, haven't seen a lot of progress recently, but they are mostly stuck on that code review state. A new issue that I'd like to bring up this week is something that needs additional feedback, is issue 2398. 2398 is a question about when putting a block onto a layout that uses fields from the user account, that if you use the current user and try to pull out a field that's on that user's account, then it throws an error because the internally the block, when it gets past the user account, it's past the global user account, which doesn't have fields attached to it. And so 2398, the solution that's currently in place makes it so that, well, the user account that gets passed in is now a fully loaded user object. But the difference of that, or a consequence of that change, is that it makes it so that the current user's account gets loaded from the database on every single page request, because every page is delivered by a layout, and every layout would need to have the context of the current user with all of the fields loaded. And so the question is there, can we implement this in a way that we're not loading the user object fully all the time? Or potentially maybe we should be loading the user's fields into either the user account that's passed into layouts, or even possibly into the global user account that's available as a global across the entire system. So it's an open question on that one. The pull request that we have is working. It does make it so that there's additional database queries on every single page request, which I have some concern about, but it might be the best approach. So we're looking for some additional feedback there. Next up is Tugboats for pull request sandboxes, issue 4351. We have a Tugboat. First of all, Tugboat is the service that we use for making sandboxes. When you visit the homepage of backdropcms.org, there's a try demo button, and that spins up a sandbox on Tugboat, which is a containerized service that we can customize to do various things. The primary function of Tugboat that they advertise as their business model is that it's for sandbox creation. When you create a pull request, that makes a working sandbox. And we have a service that does that already called ZenCI, but we've been having some issues with the sandboxes not spinning up properly and sometimes not working correctly. And so we're evaluating using Tugboat as an alternative to that. And the current status of that is that we have the configuration merged into the Backdrop core repository. So we're configured as far as the core repository, and now we need to hook it up to a Tugboat account. The problem is that we would need to spin up so many Tugboat sandboxes that we would expend the current account that we're using right now. And so we have a meeting set up to discuss what kind of collaboration we can have in between Backdrop and the Tugboat product with the owners of Tugboat tomorrow, and Gregory and I are going to be meeting with that group then. So we'll have some more information about, how we'll be able to proceed after we talk to them tomorrow. Do you guys have any other issues you guys would like to surface for the current release before I move on to 118? Okay. Well, 118 is the next version of Backdrop that will be coming out January 15th with feature freeze on January 1st. That will be in 2021, which is just exciting to think about the end of this year. So the first item that we've got here is MySQL 8 support. The issue is 4238. And this feature we have merged into the 1.x branch, so it's already in the next version of Backdrop. However, the issue is still open in a state of needs testing because we're considering backporting into 117 sooner than January 15th. So MySQL 8 is the current version of MySQL that gets installed on pretty much every Linux distribution if you do an install of MySQL. Backdrop works fine with the latest release of MariaDB. It's only the MySQL variant that is having this particular problem, that there's new additional keywords that need to be escaped. So we're considering putting that back in. It seems to be really stable. We've gotten a lot of testing on the issue, but we'd like to get a little bit more of it before we consider pulling it into 117. Next up is WebP support, issue 4509. Indigo Zella is the advocate for that issue. It pointed out that the issue already has tests. I incorrectly asked for tests to be made, but there apparently already are some. So it's back to needs review. It has tests. It's all set to get a code review. It's actually really pretty simple conceptually. So that would make it so that we would have a new image format out of the box in Backdrop Core if your version of PHP supports that format. Next up is Upgrade UI, issue 4345. Jen, you are the advocate for this issue. Do you have any updates?
Yeah, I added it into the agenda. No updates since last week.
Okay. All right, we'll just move on along. Next up is the media library dialog. We'd like to add a file name filter to that dialog. It's issue 3293. Lauren is the advocate for this one. It's currently marked as it needs help. There's no pull request. We know that this would be a highly desirable feature, and it's a great candidate for the next release of Backdrop, but there's no code backed up here yet. I think that we've been having some problems with the way that the Ajax system works, I think. I don't have a real clear understanding of this issue, but there's an open call for help on this particular issue.
I think it has something to do with how modal forms load Ajax calls. Like they're like detached and reattached in a way that, because it's a CK editor modal, that makes it so that you can't just like form alter a form and expect expose filters to work the same way. So I think there was some JavaScript confusion in there, and it would be good to have someone who knows how those modals work help sort that out.
Next up is adding a setting to the menu block for changing or for setting a breakpoint. So right now, Backdrop has a hard-coded location. When you resize the window, the built-in navigation switches to a hamburger menu at a certain point. And there's a question of how can we handle that to make it so that that location of where it changes can be changed. The latest on this that I know of, Jen, you're updating the agenda right now, but the latest I know of is that we have a configuration that just simply makes it be specific to menu blocks in particular, that you can configure the breakpoint for the menu block. Currently, there's a pull request that is out there that seems to work, but it's marked needs some work.
Yeah, if it were to get merged into core, all existing sites would break because it removes the core style sheet that handles breakpoints and adds a whole bunch of additional ones. So any site that has styled their drop-down menu would lose the styling and would get back all of the core styling that they'd previously overwritten. So I linked it to the other issue where we have this ongoing problem of like how to add CSS to core without breaking existing sites. And so I think we need to figure that out before we can start adding, merging things that that change CSS in core. And so I think we need to figure out what our policy is, like if we want to do things conditionally, or if we want to just say anyone running an existing site should expect their site to break with every update. I don't know, but we need to reach a consensus there before we can decide how to solve this problem. And this isn't just basis either. This is like, you know, whether you're using basis or not, your site will probably break after this change.
Thanks for bringing it up, Jen. I've kind of backed off it. I made a big deal about this issue last release cycle, and I feel like it kind of gets stuck with everybody not liking the proposed solutions, but not providing like one that they like. And so we're sort of stuck on like a solution that there's any consensus behind. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I feel like we're at. And I kind of just sort of put this on the back burner and moved my attention to other issues. But it's holding things up. There's, it's just like there's a number of issues that I've just written off my agenda because they can't be addressed until we know what's going on here.
Yeah, this particular approach, it's literally creating all new CSS files that, yeah, I could see some issues with that.
Well, I mean, although to be fair, I haven't looked exactly at your concern, Jen. I was wondering if this didn't give us another option, maybe in our CSS thing. This thing with the breakpoint for the block. I mean, this seems different than anything we proposed for other things because yes, it changes the CSS, but it only does so if you.
Oh, it does so for everything, whether you touch that setting or not. It throws out the old CSS and writes new ones. So in my last comment, I proposed like,
okay,
we could leave the existing CSS and just duplicate it all over the place, but we need to decide that duplicating CSS in multiple places is okay, because that means that in the future, if we wanted to make any changes to anything, we'd have to do it in multiple places, which is fine as long as we decide that's our process. But, we do need to just keep that in mind.
One of the things, so I haven't reviewed the issue in a few weeks now, but are we adding a generic breakpoint, sort of like API-ish? No, it's just for the meta block.
Yeah.
I would find more value. I know that it would be more complicated, but I would find more value if there was a generic breakpoint API added to core that other things can use it. But
so we're not rolling that out. But it's really hard to provide a generic API breakpoint in core because right now we're using the Bootstrap grid system and it only supports certain points. I think it would be smarter to like very slowly introduce things that we know are going to work rather than providing a new feature that has 4 settings that work, but anything else you enter isn't going to work, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think like this is sort of a good first step to figuring out like how we're going to solve breakpoints. Once we solve this, we might be able to introduce additional settings and then maybe come up with some kind of an API. But I think that we can't start there because our core already has a bunch of stuff.
So the breakpoints API is in core for the 8, right? You can specify breakpoint. Yeah, okay, cool. No worries.
How hard would it be to like replace the Bootstrap grid system stuff? Like if I just decided I want all of my layouts to be based on CSS grid instead, like would I have to override all the templates?
So right now there's one library that's attached, and so you could just remove the current library and add a different one. But usually if you want to use CSS grid, you probably also want to have different classes that trigger it, a different grid.
Right.
So you'd probably want to override your templates anyway. So it's up to you which way you want to go. You could also just drop in another set of layouts that use CSS grid and use those instead.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not hard. It's all just easily attached to the library.
Swapping that out though is probably not something we're doing in 1.x of backdrop.
Oh, you mean like throw out Bootstrap and use something else in core? That again would also break existing sites.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. That was kind of my question, is like, how much work would it be to not break the sites? And it sounds like a lot.
Well, so layouts are interesting because we already done this once where we threw out all of the layouts we provided in core and we just put them into like a legacy section where if you were using them, they were enabled, but if you weren't using them, you wouldn't see them. So we still ship core with the original 4 layouts that we had that were all custom done. So we have a precedent for doing this and we could do it again. So if Bootstrap dies or everyone decides they don't like it or something, it would be pretty easy to like retire these and set up a new set. And then existing sites wouldn't change, but all new sites would get the new set.
Yeah, or have an option to use either Bootstrap or the new thing. Similar to what, so when we set up, I know we rely on Contrib for that, but when we set up text formats, you give the option to select a text editor, right? We can equally select which library to load, right? Or not?
I mean, you can, but you probably wouldn't want to use two competing grid systems on the same site.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm saying we
So
give
you don't want
them
to do it per layout. You'd want to do it
the
site.
layout.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but like, as an example, we could allow people to, we could have a contrib solution to this problem, basically, where they could replace the grid system, and then they could, then more than 4 options would work for setting your own breakpoints.
Yeah, well, so this isn't related to the grid system. The grid system is only attached to layouts, and this is attached to menus. So this isn't related. It just so happens that the breakpoint that's in the CSS file for menus is the same as the breakpoint for the grid system, because we figured most people would be breaking at the same place.
Yeah. Just throwing it out there, I don't want to derail this a lot. Since we have the option to just install things, we have previously removed things in the early days that were in D7 core and we moved them to Contrib. And since we have the option to automatically install things, we could, during an upgrade, say, we're not switching this library until that, like we do this once again, like if we ever decide to replace Bootstrap, we move it to Contrib. And then for existing sites, we make sure that it automatically installs the Contrib module, something like that. I don't know. That's an option because we do it automatically.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one clearly needs some more thinking. I don't have anything to add that is productive, I don't think, at this point. But yeah, seems like this is, yeah, boils down to that question that is issue 4167. How do we change CSS in core safely? Or we need to come up with some approach that changes the CSS less drastically that would somehow be compatible with existing sites. Which I guess is a big generic problem, but I'm saying there might also be a specific way that might be safe in this situation, but I don't know what that is.
Just as a general advice, team, if you can add that 4663 to the list of issues that are being blocked by 4167, maybe once we have enough issues, there's also enough drive to just push for a decision, I guess, or a solution.
Okay, I don't know if there's an official list like that, but we can create one. I can do that.
All right. Next issue is simple in concept, and that is that the full HTML text format, we have the intention to rename that to raw HTML. The issue is 4499. Tim, you're the advocate for this. Any updates?
No, I think we had a good discussion last week. I just haven't had time to follow up at all.
Okay. Next up is adding a new token for user accounts. Adds a link subtoken to the user account tokens. Issue is 4584. Gregory, do you have any updates on that issue?
Yeah, so that's 99% there. It's a marked RTBC. It has a tag for needs more feedback. I'm probably going to remove that tag. So the only remaining task there is to replace the mentions of login name with username. And I think we're good to go. So I can then jump to my next favorite one, which is merging all the update pages.
A much more ambitious undertaking. Okay, great. Let's see. Advanced caching, adding up cache tags and max age headers. Issue 4127. Joseph, do you have any updates this week?
I have not made a lot of progress in the last week. I did, however, discover that a bunch of the features of the Drupal 7 module, that is like the backport of that feature, depend on core patches. So I think I'm actually going to have to hunt down a bunch of core patches from Drupal 7 and include those into the issue, which I don't know, is probably going to cause feature creep.
Maybe you can create separate issues and we can deal with them separately.
All right.
Okay. Well, that's the status for advocated issues for 118. We also have initiatives. Telemetry is the first initiative that we have undertaking. Tim, do you have any updates on telemetry for this week?
Not really. I think my next step is to do some testing of it myself. If I recall, we had a good discussion about it last week. I think I even posted a link. I'm not sure in the issue to the discussion, but it was I don't remember there being any immediate next steps other than getting some more testing on it. Is that right? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, more testing I think is issue number 1, and there are a couple of obvious things that we need to enhance. The reporting of the data is one that we need to get into a better format, and we need the ability to suppress the retainment of data that is sent to us. So if a Contrib module tries to send us data that we specifically haven't allowed, then we should be discarding it. So we need to make it so that backdrop servers cannot collect inadvertent data, basically. So
is that something? So you seem to have an idea about that, Nate, and you did the other work. Is that something you're likely to have time for, or?
Yeah, I think it's likely that I'll be the one trying to take that on unless someone else steps forward.
Okay. Thanks.
Are we doing the decoupling from the installer thingy, the steps and the checkboxes in that PR, or that's separate? We left that.
Great question. We haven't gotten that far yet.
Yeah, I think the problem is that I have, we haven't been able to test it yet, and things like that are going to come up. Like once I actually have it local or whatever and start to test it.
Yeah, I think maybe, Gregory, we should separate out that problem. We might put telemetry in core, have it be a disabled module because we can't turn it on by default unless we ask people about it. And then separately have an issue for like redo the installer checkboxes, because that also affects the way the update module works.
Yeah, I think we already have an issue for that.
Yeah,
we have a separate issue for that anyway. So I think, I'm not sure, but I think we do.
Okay. Unless there's anything else, I think that's probably good for telemetry. Next up is the Ready to Wear initiative. Luke, do you have updates on Ready to Wear?
I should. I've been working on it, and things are proceeding forward. I've particularly been working behind the scenes a bit with Tim to put together some prototype ideas and thoughts about it. I don't really have much concrete beyond that. I do have sort of a question that I'm finding, so I'll just throw out to this knowledgeable crowd here, which has to do with dark mode things. In particular, what I was hoping to discover was like a dark mode color setting, and this feels like something that's been gone over. So before I try to reinvent the wheel. I've read stuff and people have talked about it and seen things. So I'm just kind of curious, is that as easy as just choosing some colors and calling it a setting, or how tough is it to integrate color setting presets with
yeah, so there's an issue for dark mode version of 7, because I don't think that people want dark mode of their front end theme. I think it's usually used for content editors and people in the backend. I could be wrong about it, but there's issue 3990, which aims to add color support for 7 for the 7 theme, and then provide a preset which turns it into a dark mode thing, because that's something that people have requested.
So
Also, the Gene contributed theme for Drupal offers that as an option.
So would we want this to be configurable per user or global across the whole site?
Global across the whole site.
So the color module currently can't do that. Or I mean, sorry, the color module currently can't support a per user setting. So global across the whole site would probably not be that hard.
No. It's not already. It seems like it would. I went to the menu and like, okay, which one of these is dark? But I was surprised that none of them were. So is that just that no one's bothered to do that, or is there something making it hard?
So for the front end,
So
I think browser extensions that do that for front end themes. So no one that's building a site for general consumption might have thought of that. And the request, even in the Drupal land, is for dark modes for backend themes, like for the admin theme. I haven't seen any requests related to any front theme being in dark mode.
Am I using the terminology wrong? I just mean, white fonts on a black background rather than dark fonts on a light background.
But Luke, are you talking about just a different color scheme, or like when I think of night mode, I think of something that switches at night, right? So that it looks one way during the day and another way at night. And that's what I have. You're not talking about that.
The much simpler case of just
having a dark color scheme.
White on black, or
Sure.
the equivalent of that. So for example, in the boot swatch choices, which are honestly the boot swatch homepage is as I mentioned in our chatting before, it is awfully close to kind of what I had in mind, just like choices of things. And of their 21 options, 3 of them are light on dark, and that seems actually. I think this might be one of these like professional versus small scale things, because large professional sites almost always are not dark, but I think it's much more common among smaller groups.
If you're just talking, yeah. As I
I've
mentioned,
done a lot of like rock band things, and like most of those are dark. And
just looking for like a color palette that leans towards the darker, I think that's not technically a problem. It just involves a designer coming up with a good combination. And I also think it's a per theme thing though, right? So like we could add one to basis, but each theme would kind of treat that differently. So each theme sort of sets its own predefined color sets. We don't have a way to do that, I don't think, across all themes, because that just, I don't know if that would work.
Right. I wasn't meaning that. I just meant for the simple case of ready to wear, of having some choices. I want to have one dark.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be pretty easy. It would just take someone some time to like actually figure out what the color should be.
Okay. So it's not hard, just no one's done it.
Right.
I'll
It would be. I think it would be a matter of adding a theme to the demo site which supports dark mode, and adding dark mode into a theme, it's relatively easy, right? Or not?
Yeah, but I don't think that's what Luke is getting at. I think Luke is talking about, if you go to basis right now, there's 5 color schemes and none of them are dark.
Okay,
So he just wants to add a dark color scheme to basis. Is that right, Luke?
That's pretty close to it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. There's no issue for that. So the issue that I have at hand is specifically for 7.
Right.
Okay. No, it's one of those funny things. It's like so easy that no one bothers to do it. So I'll go ahead and do it.
I provided a link in the chat for the issue specific to 7. Maybe you can create a respective issue for basis.
Oh, sure. All right. And with that, I'm out.
Great, thanks, Luke. Let's see, Tim, you have an additional thing that you've slotted in the open Q&A. That's
Sure.
where we are now, is just general discussion. You have an idea about profile selector. Seems like we do have time. Well, kind of. We've got 4 minutes until the top of the hour. Would you prefer to do that after the meeting or do it now?
Either way, I could describe the idea really quick. It's just an idea that came up that I gave feedback on. I think it's interesting having it on the tape might not hurt, but we could hold the discussion off. There's nothing urgent about it, but so this backdrop event distribution project that I started, part of the goal is I've heard a few people actually bring up distributions recently for backdrop, and we don't have any official distributions. I know individual developers have created them and used them. I use one. And I'm interested in exploring that idea a little further. And I was talking to my friend Wilbur yesterday about this, and he asked, would it be possible, and I think it would, I'm not saying it's a good idea yet, but if that rather than having distributions, if we used install profiles, and right now, when you get to the install profile page during installation, I think by default, you don't actually have a choice, do you? Unless you've added your own install profile, it just assumes the standard profile. Is that right? Is that the current situation?
Yes, that's right.
There's
If you have,
also the hidden. So people that know how to use this feature can enable it. There's not enough things required that have been bootstrapped by that point to take advantage of the project browser. But there is an issue, and that's what I'm trying to find, which I remember. Sorry.
You might be ahead of me then. Maybe maybe there is an issue for this already.
There's an issue that says allow installation profiles to run after the installation of backup.
Oh, okay. Well, my idea was during installation, when you get to that page, that it give you a project browser, so you could pick from existing installation profiles, and then during installation.
At that point, project browser, which is a module, has not been even installed or bootstrapped. So,
got it.
I don't know what it would take, but maybe Nate is the best person to. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of thing. I think you would need to run the installer to get the database initiated, and then after you had it basically installed, then you would possibly then kick them into the project browser if you wanted to then run additional things. But then you get into the question of, Gregory, like, if you were pre-bundling things, it wouldn't be an install profile anymore because the installer is already run. And so it would be something that was like, okay, now I need to add this to my existing site. So either it would need to be something else like a recipe thing that we've discussed, or you would need to somehow make it so profiles could be run after the installer, but that gets into a whole nother set of potential problems.
Okay. The issue is pretty, one of the old ones, not 3-digit ones, but it's 1591, which is titled Allow Install Profiles to Run After Site Creation.
Okay.
Or it's a similar as to allow people to switch installation profiles, I guess.
Well, I think there's a whole there's the technical discussion too. Is it even a desirable idea? I just wanted to quickly see what the technical issues were, and I think you've already answered that this has been helpful. So it's just something I'm floating around, and I thought it would be easier to talk about it quick than to try and do it in the issue queue. Thank you.
But yeah, this ties to the discussion of the Tugboat demos as well. So if we do have an installation profile or a distribution, like the umami thing, I think that Simply Test Me already allows you, has a one-click button that says install, instead of installing Drupal, install umami, right? So we would like to ideally get to the place where we allow people to install those things so that they can try real sites, like sites with actual content, to get a better idea. But yeah,
but right now,
I consider all these as small building blocks into getting where we want. There's some other issues which involve technical solutions that we need to get to first.
Good enough. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else that anybody would like to bring up?
Just a question: is the documentation thing an initiative? We didn't decide anything officially yet, but it's sort of like a proposed initiative or to be proposed thing, right?
We were gonna wait until there was time to work on it in mid-December.
Okay.
All right. Well, I guess that's it then. We can say thank you, everybody, for joining the meeting. Thank you, everybody out there for watching. And thank you, everyone that works on Backdrop every week. We really appreciate all of the work.
Also, I just want to throw out there, we are looking for new volunteers to help us manage the Backdrop Contrib group. We're getting a lot of applications now, and it would be great if we could have other more people who are empowered to review those applications and admit people to the group. So if anyone's interested in doing that, reach out to myself, Greg, or Tim, and we can let you in.
Oh, I just remembered one final thing. Backdrop for Good came up. And so I think that the domain has expired, and maybe Jeff was the one that registered it. So we do have the the GitHub repo. Maybe we don't need the actual database and files. Maybe we can just set it up from scratch. It didn't have much content, but yeah, that was a useful tool for outreach, and maybe it can help us now that we have more people joining the community. So just as one of the to-do things in the backlog, maybe revive that. But in order to do that, we would need to know where was it hosted. Was it hosted in one of the Backdrop owned nodes, or was it somewhere else? And then make a decision if we want to purchase that domain or transfer it. It doesn't have to be decided now, just for next meeting.